Welcome back to Sapphire's Unscripted. We're sitting here on a Sunday night, almost midnight. Well, what feels like midnight because we had to wait for the Champions Cup to finish before we could bring you guys this live entertainment because we are Sapphire's Unscripted. We're shooting from the hip. Ladies and gentlemen, the weekend is over. What did we think of this weekend's Champions Cup? We'll start before you guys start spitballing your own random stuff. Saracens versus Connacht, whatever they want to call themselves. Casual bias rugby, what's your thought with that Saracens 55-36 win?
Well, firstly, Brett, it's Connacht or Connaught, okay? The way we say it is correct because the way you said it, you just deserve to lose the game, okay? Why do you want to make names tough? You know we're Sapphires. We can't say that shit. Anyway, it was a brilliant performance by Saris. Okay, listen. They were under the pump from the start. I think they were behind by like 15, 16 points just before halftime. Made a comeback. And then absolutely went out and had a statement performance in the second half and put like an extra 35 to 40 points past Connaught. That is ridiculous. That is... Like, you can't even do that against Cardiff, really. And Cardiff are bums. Good performance. Very good. Very impressive.
No, I completely agree. And to all those people saying that Saracens were done after the Bulls game, have a look there. Saracens showing their true potential. Obviously, we know they are a great side in the Prem. They've always been up there. So, a fully expected result, in my opinion.
Was it? Did you think home field advantage played a big role, or were they just always going to beat Connacht?
I think home field advantage will always be a massive factor in any game, unless you're like a zebra or something. Well, Sharks take a hide on this one, but yeah, I think Saracens are just better all round in general. I just think Saracens the better team, and it may not have been the slaughtering if it was in Ireland, but that's how the cookie crumbles.
Well, I think I'm more with like, oh my goodness, it is. We've got technical difficulties out here. Brett has struggled. It feels like Batman is in my room, going crazy out here. Anyway, I think more so it wasn't the home field advantage this weekend. I feel it was the away field disadvantage last weekend against the Bulls because they got absolutely stamped in extreme heat. They're not used to that at all. Flew in the middle of the week and then got pummeled. Now they're back where they are used to playing. Of course, the home field advantage is there, but I think they're just more used to that type of weather, those type of conditions. So I just think Loftus was an absolute nightmare game for them to take on the Bulls.
Okay, and speaking of, because Pickers came from behind to win the game, another come from behind win in a game that I thought was pretty one-sided for a while. People came to me at halftime and said their team is elite and they are practically beating the best in Europe. Sale Sharks led against Leinster, and yet they got absolutely obliterated. My goodness, that felt good, and I don't even like Leinster.
You know, Brett, I think the same person might have told me as well that their team is elite. And they got absolutely humbled by embarrassed. Absolutely embarrassing. You're performing so well in the first half, right? Upset. I wouldn't even say upset of the century necessarily, but a massive upset. And that could have been a statement victory, secure your spot in the next round after the knockouts. You could probably loaf past Stade Francais. And then you get pummeled. And I'm talking like embarrassingly. You had to score 2 tries in the last 5 minutes to make the scoreline look better after you were in a big lead in the first half. Yeah. What is going on?
Yeah.
Leinster, you beauts. We may not like you, but you always come to our rescue when these English Prem fans want to get loud, telling us that they have the best league in the world. So, Leinster, we don't like you, but we thank you.
I just do actually want to add something to the Sale game. For the first, say, 60, no, about 55 minutes, Robert de Priya, actually, this Oak is putting up his hand for either that Bok jersey or just to come back to South Africa because, firstly, he led by example. He was brilliant. And just his overall general play, like he was very good. And then they just fell apart at the end. But, I mean, do we have thoughts on Robert de Priya?
Well, now we don't watch too much of the Prem, right? But what we see about Sale in the Champions Cup, how does George Ford start above him? Like, what makes George Ford better than Robert du Preez? Robert du Preez is class. If it wasn't for Andre Pollard, he plays for the Boks. Now, I know Mani plays there as well, but Robert du Preez is like the perfect replacement for Andre. If Andre was to say, listen, I'm hanging up my boots now, and we don't want to go for that Mani type player with the flair, you go for Robert. Robert is absolutely brilliant. There's no way on earth that you are mentally sane and pick George Ford above Robert du Preez.
I agree.
Yeah, it's just English bias there, in my opinion. Like Robert du Preez, I think controls the game better. I mean, George Ford showed glimpses of that in the World Cup, but Robert du Preez controls the game better. I just think his attacking awareness is better, and I rate the guy 100%. I think he definitely deserves a Bok call-up at some point. I would love to see him play for the Boks, even if it's against in the Portugal test. Just give the guy a chance. Let him show South Africans that don't get the chance to see the Champions Cup or the Prem, like what he can do.
I agree. But moving on, there are two games specifically that stood out for me. Before we get to the South African games, two games that stood out for me was the Cardiff Bath game. That was probably one of the best games so far of the whole tournament. And then Stephen Kitshoff's Ulster, who absolutely obliterated Siya Kolisi's Racing 92. My goodness, how did that even happen?
I mean, I didn't even think Cardiff knows how to play rugby. Turns out they know how to score about 40 points in 20 minutes against another team.
Exactly.
That scoreline was about 40 points after 17 minutes. That was ridiculous. Up and down, just like zero defense. But I mean, it was amazing to watch. That is what rugby's about. Not these Prem games that you see an ending of 9-3.
Yeah. Agreed. And I don't know if we all noticed there, but I think Kitshoff is giving a few Bok moves away because the move, as we all know it, was shown for Ulster this past weekend. And I love it. I love it. It's good to see that they're bringing some good play.
I think he phoned Rassie and asked for permission because when I saw that, I thought, oh, this is straight out of the Stephen Kitshoff handbook. That's what he took to Ulster. Loved it.
I'm actually glad that Ulster got the victory. Not that I care about Ulster, but the fact of the matter is when a team performs bad, they start judging or criticizing the players as well, naturally. And then there starts to creep in some doubts about the ability of Kitshoff, even though he's done it for the Bok jersey. And I think this will be a massive confidence boost for him again. Of course, he struggled by the end of the World Cup. He needed a good performance today as well because Ulster has been struggling. And I think this is a good momentum boost for him going into the future because, of course, he's still going to play for the Boks. And we want that confident Kitshoff that knows he's the best in the world, that plays like he's the best in the world. We can't have lackluster props being down and thinking, do I still have the ability, doubting in themselves? I like it.
Agreed. Also, a bit of a weird one for me was Exeter giving the URC champions a little bit of a hiding. It was a home game for Exeter, but I mean that Munster performance was actually that was pretty shocking.
Yeah, Munster, it's like just they're not clicking this season at all. They're having issues with both of our Boklocks, Jean Klein and Achia Snyman. and they're getting defensive over the fact that these guys aren't their best players. And Munster fans, they tend to think that these Sappers aren't the reason. And I'm not saying that they are the reason that they're champs, but people are forgetting Jean Klein and Athens Neyman bring a lot to that Munster side, like a lot. And they are struggling without Athie, it's clear. And Exeter are also that team that are just, they can bite you out of nowhere. Sometimes they're up here, sometimes they're down here. But when they're on form, it's a team that can really bite you if you're not careful.
Yeah, I mean, Munster weren't too bad, in my opinion, at the start of the game. They had a lead, a big lead, actually, and then absolutely crumbled. The same with, we just spoke about it. Who did Saracens play?
Sorry?
Connaught.
Yeah, it's the exact same thing. It's in the Irish blood to just crumble all of a sudden. Because Exeter has been good in the Prem. They've been on good form, but how do you just butcher leads like that? Like, you can't be in the lead by like 12 points or something with 20 minutes to go and then lose it by 10 points.
Yeah.
Like, it is physically impossible. And I've got to give a shout out to one of these Exeter players, because if he plays for his country, like he plays for Exeter, he would be scary. And that is Henry Slade. Like, you can see, he just, like, it looks like he has the keys to the city, just does what he wants, and he's absolutely brilliant at it. But then he goes to England, and then he realizes, listen, maybe I should be shit along with my Rugby Nation here. That's how it feels. But he plays very, very good for Exeter, and Exeter are looking very impressive. They could go for this. I'm not even joking.
Yeah, this is true. And then also, what do we think of so Antoine Dupont is obviously leaving. He's not going to play in the Six Nations, but he actually helped to lose today to give old Andre Esterhuizen's Harlequins a proper rugby lesson with a 47-19 win, which was actually, Andre Esterhuizen played well, bounced Oak. I think he almost took off his shoulder, but yeah, and that was pretty much Harlequin's only thing that they could talk about. Was
if it wasn't for Marcus Smith and Andre, they would have nothing to write home about. They literally, it's like you were a kid and you said a bad word, you swore, and you have to put your hands to the front, and your dad just comes with like a wooden spoon and absolutely butchers your hands. Like, they were pummeled. It was an embarrassing performance. Like truly. You're playing home. You're playing home. It's a game that everyone hypes up. It's not a derby, but you should treat this like a derby, because this is your big game in your pool, and you get absolutely dismantled from start to finish. Like, Toulouse made that look easy.
Yeah, true.
I think people forget how good Toulouse can actually be. And as much as Harlequins have their star players, and they can be a good team at times. I mean, we saw how creative they can be, and who can forget Tyron Green's try from the cross kick? I mean, absolutely insane. But Toulouse they are 3 steps above Harlequins in all factors, and I think that was the case today. Harlequins were always trying to hang on. They were always just within 7, and then when Toulouse just took it up a gear, they took it all the way, and like you said, a rugby lesson.
Yeah,
but Brevin, my point is, like, if you know this is your big game, doesn't matter if you know you're a couple of levels below. You try and step up, especially when you're playing home. The crowd was up for it for the Harlequins, and it was just embarrassing. Like, it felt like they had no fight in the game. They just gave up at the end. I just feel it was a total embarrassing performance. Because if you want to put it in perspective, that is like Leinster taking on the Stormers, equal levels. Because Leinster has this insane squad depth and everything. You won't see the Stormers get battered nearly 60 points past them against Leinster, especially not at home. So what is your excuse? Like, you could get beat by 15 points, and that's a respectable margin against a team like Toulouse, but not by that margin. I'm sorry.
Yeah, especially not with the names that Quins had in their team, and the way Quins have actually been playing over the last 2 seasons. That score doesn't reflect anything what they've achieved up until now. But the game for me, the closest game of the weekend. Yeah, there were some one pointers in it, but the closest game was this last one, the one that we waited for just so we could
Mm.
make this bloody video. It was so tight the whole game. Scores were level. I thought it was going to be a draw, and then Leicester Tigers went over to France without Pollard, without Jasper Wiese, without any Saffers, and they pulled off a win at start against Stade Francais. That just wow, kudos to them.
Mm. And that's not easy, especially traveling to France with a semi-weaker team.
Yeah,
It's not easy to go to France. France is a hostile place. Each supporter fan base is hostile when they want to be. So kudos to Leicester, and they are showing that they are top dog of the whole English scene. In my opinion, they are really really good. In my opinion.
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, Leicester Tigers have got that rugby heritage when it comes to winning trophies in England and stuff. Of course, they didn't fill me with any confidence with their performance against the Stormers. But this performance, on the other hand, does fill me with confidence if I was a Leicester Tigers fan. Leaving your big names at home, going over to France, and still getting the job done. That's 2 wins from 2 in the tournament for you, especially after La Rochelle has capitulated. They've bottled it. Of course, they want to bounce back. Let's not write off La Rochelle. But that has massive implications in the pool stage. That, well, Brett and myself, we are very intrigued when it comes to this pool stage, of course, because the Stormers are in the same pool. So this has massive implications for us because we thought we could pip Leicester Tigers, but now they've made it a bit harder. So, I mean, this pool is exciting to say the least.
Mm.
yeah. Actually, sorry, I'm carrying on. Moving on. I want to talk about. So there were two games, South African games, that for me were the most important. Obviously, the Bulls travelled to Lyon. They selected a bit of a weakened side. We'll get to that now. But the Stormers beating La Rochelle in Cape Town with a very dreadful performance from the Stormers, and they still managed to beat the best in Europe. How impressive was that nail bite win?
That
Can
was,
I just well,
you can
well,
go.
you go because you're the Stormers fan. You give your passion, and I'll give
I won't say
my
no.
opinion.
I'll take the floor. Listen, I went berserk. It was hectic. It was an absolute shit show. This game boiled my blood, but also gave me the most joy that I felt in a very long time. Okay, because at a time in when we started this podcast, I literally said I don't even know when we're going to win a game again before we play the Bulls because we always win the Bulls or we always beat the Bulls. This game gave me a heart attack, and I know I'm just going to be that Safa. That ref was horrible, horrible. He should be fined. Every single penny he makes, he should be fined. That was a disgraceful performance. I mean, I spoke to Brett, right, over the phone. How many times did we not say, listen, what is this guy doing? Like, I can understand if you're standing on the other side of the field and you don't see anything, but something happening straight in front of you, that is a joke. Even the TM, when I say the ref, I mean all of them, even the TMO, that headbutt to say, listen, that's no foul play seen, and we have to kick off and restart the game. And then Super Sport coming to our rescue and throwing it up on the big screen where this guy doesn't even go for a tackle, no arms, just like jumps straight with his head. You want to tell me no foul play? Are you on drugs? What are you doing?
Okay,
Victory. Marnie
Tell us,
Love.
passionate rant over.
tell us how you really feel. Okay,
Should I say?
Brevin.
Oh.
I love the passion. I respect it, and obviously, I'm actually glad. I'm so happy that the Stormers really went out there and beat the best in Europe, and showed the whole world that our franchises aren't pushovers. You know, we're gonna fight for this. We may have struggled last season, but we're gonna give it our best shot this time. And Marnie Libok, dude, awesome, awesome, awesome,
Ice in the
awesome.
veins, mate.
Like,
I
come
in the
on.
face.
Like
That was
we, I don't care if you're a Bulls, Storm, well, obviously Stormers, Sharks, Lions, whoever. You got to be happy with Marnie Lebok there because he is the future going forward for the Box, and to see that is just awesome. Pressure straight down the middle.
I wonder
I
if he
just
was
have
thinking. I wonder if it was going through his mind that I didn't have a good World Cup. The whole world is pretty much watching me now. If I miss this, they're going to kind of expect me to miss it because of my World Cup performance off the kicking tee. And then the second he struck it, he just put his hands up and he knew that's the win against the best in Europe.
I just think
Yeah.
he feels so at home playing for the Stormers. I think the confidence just oozes out of him when he plays for the Stormers. And there's two things that I want to bring up. Firstly, Damian Willemse is sensational. Like, surely he has to be up there with the best players in the world. Like, we watched that game, and every time he touches the ball, it's magic. Like, he's head and shoulders above everyone on that field, whether it was La Rochelle or Stormers or anything. I don't even care. He was head and shoulders above everyone. But the question I want to get to is this is a question for Brevan. How do you feel watching that Stormers performance with our boys back after beating the European champions going next week into the Bulls game? Does it make you a bit nervous? Does it actually excite you for the game, knowing you're going to lose by 30 points?
I was waiting for the banter part of that question. Of course, it had to come. But honestly, I'm glad because you don't want a team going into a derby with low on confidence. And like you say, form doesn't matter when it comes to derbies because it's a derby. But it's good to know both teams are going into this with form. We'll get into the Bulls game next, I'm sure. But it's good to know that the Stormers are going into a Bulls game with confidence because as a Bulls fan, if we are going to beat the Stormers, I want to beat them at their best. I don't want to beat them when they are down in the dumps and not performing well. So at the end of the day, when it comes to this Champions Cup, Stormers can landslide it for all I care, as long as the South African teams are making us proud. Obviously, URC, it's a different story, but Champions Cup, we got to show the world that the Saffers are on top.
Yes, I love the confidence oozing through you by stating that you don't want to beat a weakened Stormer side as if you're going to win. But I like the confidence. I'll give
They
you that.
won't beat they wouldn't even beat a weakened Stormers side.
The Bulls have been good. The Bulls have actually been South Africa's best team of this tournament so far. And let's get into that game because they sent a weakened side to Leon. And to be honest, they were the best team on the field and lost it in the end. And then with Van der Walt missing that penalty, which could have won them the game from almost right in front of the poles, does he have the Monty Lebok curse or what? What was that? Or is it just the Scottish in him?
Possibly, possibly. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna be positive Polly over here because I'm not upset with the result. As much as it's disappointing to lose, I'm happy that we took one losing bonus point out of it. Traveling to France, like I said, is never easy. Taking a week inside. And you have to admit the Bulls bottled it. We were in control of that game for large parts of it. So there has to be some kind of accountability there. Lift up the standards when you're in front. Because even in the main side, when we were in front against Saracens, pummeling them, Saracens were creeping back towards the end. So we have to be careful in that regard. But I'll take 1 point, and now it's on to the big one against the Stormers, which is why Jake sent the second side in the first place to France.
I mean, oh, that the Bulls should be very disappointed with their performance. I'm not even saying this as banter. I'm being dead serious because they did the same as we just spoke about Connaught and Munster and those teams. You can't have that big of a lead and then bottle it. Like you sent a weakened side, but there was a lot of players that played last season for your team and still got you to what? Where did you get the quarterfinals, the semifinals of the URC? And Leon isn't this amazing team. It's not like you sent a weakened team to play against Racing or against Toulouse. Like Leon isn't really up there necessarily in the top 14. So I could understand a loss if it was a close loss, but you stayed in the game. But to know you lost with that big lead, that's not good. You can't let teams keep creeping back into the game, because that just tells us you're getting lackluster, you're getting too confident, you're not taking the points on offer. And as you mentioned, it was the same with the Saracens game. The Bulls dominated Saracens from start to finish, or well, start to just before the finish, and then Saracens started playing much better, or the Bulls let them back into the game. And you can't keep on doing that, because it's going to bite you in the ass, and it's going to bite you in the ass when it matters most.
Yeah, I agree.
Can't argue with that.
Can't argue with that. But actually, seeing that we got two other teams in South Africa as well, but they play in the Challenge Cup. Lions, great victory. We're not going to get into that game so much. The Lions, great victory over Newcastle Falcons. The Lions are taking their current URC form into the Challenge Cup, and I think they are strong contenders for that competition. Special mention to the Black Lion team from Georgia, also
Mm.
playing very, very good rugby. But the surprise for the day, and Casual Bias actually messaged me before the game and asked the question, are we seeing a Cheetahs upset today? So they played against the Sharks at home, Sharks with all the money in the world, all the superstars in the team, and the Cheetahs went on to beat the Sharks. What?
Firstly, I need to correct Brett, because he saw it as a question. I insinuated it. This is Casual Bias Rugby Guru. I know these things.
Sorry,
But
when I was
before we go into the game, I have a question for Brett, right? So, Brett, does the fact that Ruan Pinar is 40 years old and still putting up man of the match performances give you some hope to still go pro?
no,
Wow.
no,
Wow.
I'm tired.
Ruan
just
Pino is
What a
just
performance by the Cheetahs. Beautiful
Yeah.
performance. Of course, Sharks not the team that they should be, but I mean that's a statement win, statement performance. Of course, the Cheetahs beat the Bulls twice last season in the Currie Cup. Lovely. But to just continue their form, they haven't been playing much rugby. They're not playing in the URC or anything, but to come and play against a full strength Sharks team with all their superstars and still beat them, very impressive. Very, very impressive.
My
yeah.
biggest my biggest concern in that game was that there are people in the Shark side that they obviously got high paying contracts. I think some of the players get more than half the Cheetahs team combined, but I don't think you're going to win championship games or big competitions if you have a Apelela Fassi or a very poor, I don't know who this guy is, Makazola Mapimpi. He's probably in the worst form of his whole life, and actually has been this whole year. And a Kerwin Bosch that can't make up his mind, and a Jaden Hendrickson that doesn't know what to do, and I forget his name, their hooker, the blonde kid,
Mm.
that can't throw
Richardson.
can't throw a straight line out. These are major concerns. And a Rue, the guy that used to play for the Pumas, also a massive, almost 140 kilogram lock that just cannot. These Oaks can't gel together. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Too many Chiefs, not enough Indians. These Oaks, there's no chemistry in that Shark side, and it's a massive concern.
Does it also worry you that a lot of the main Springbok players, obviously there's a lot in the Stormers, a few in the Bulls, but the Sharks have a large amount of Springbok players in their side. Does it worry you that maybe this form almost makes them think, well, why am I playing here when I could be playing overseas and maybe winning a trophy and more money? And that almost gives them the mindset to maybe go overseas. Because it's kind of worrying if the Sharks are in such bad form, losing against a Cheetah side who, to be honest, they aren't playing against top quality opposition week in, week out to test themselves. They're just coming into this Sharks game and they win it. And it almost makes you question as a Sharks player, like, is there something wrong with me? Or is it this team? Is this team not good enough? Do I need to leave elsewhere? it is worrying for the Sharks, and I think something has to be done very soon. Otherwise, players will start disappearing, and we don't want to see that.
If this was any other team other than the Sharks, I would have no doubt that these guys just want to leave on the spot. But because they're American owned, they get paid the big bucks. So I'm pretty sure some of them are happy to just sit back, collect a paycheck, and move on. But I agree with you, Brevan. They have to fix up because it's starting to get embarrassing now. Because I can understand losing to the Cheetahs isn't the end of the world, right? But it's the way that they lose games. Just think about the game that they lost against the Bulls. It was shocking. It was embarrassment for Sharks rugby. It was embarrassment for South African rugby as a whole. If you look at it as a derby, and the one team gets pummeled like that, so they have to fix something up, whether that is to get someone else other than John Plumtree in, or they get some youngsters into this team, or whatever. But they need a full overhaul in that squad.
I have a question on the fact that we just raised the point that the Cheetahs don't play a lot of rugby, yet the Sharks do. Do you think that this could be a concern for Saru, that they could maybe look into it and maybe not let their bigger unions play as much rugby as they can? Because the Cheetahs aren't playing rugby, they're training well, they're getting their basics right, and they're beating sides like the Sharks. Does this mean the bigger unions are overplayed, especially the players that came back from the World Cup? Are they overplayed and the Cheetahs are actually managing their players better?
I,
Or
I,
was it just luck of the draw?
I'm not going with the overplayed narrative at all, because you as a club have the responsibility to have enough players there, and the responsibility to manage your team in terms of who's going to fly here, who's going to fly there. You don't see the other teams coming out saying, "Listen, we are playing too many games," because it's a privilege to play in those tournaments. You have a big enough squad, more than enough money in the world. It's just too bad you're spending all your money on the biggest players in the world that aren't bringing anything to the side. I think the Cheetahs would die to be in the position that the Sharks are in, to play in the Investec Champions Cup, to play in the URC week in, week out. Those guys have to sit back, playing that Challenge Cup, and then wait for the Curry Cup. I could understand if the Curry Cup was also involved and it's 3 tournaments that you have to juggle, but these guys are still playing 1 game a week. You send a different team to fly. So I'm not taking this narrative of we are playing too many games. This is not football where guys play 2 games a week, because then it's different. To play 2 games a week would be ridiculous. But this is 1 game a week. You've got a big enough squad and you are just performing shocking. That is not an excuse for your bad performances, because the other South African teams playing the same amount of games are not nearly as disastrous as you.
Mm. And it all goes down to, and it's something that all three of us believe in, is having accountability. Obviously things may be stacked against you in some way or another, but you have to hold accountability to yourself in the way you play, and you have to hold accountability to the way you react when it comes to losing a game. And like you say, Brett, there's no chemistry there. It almost looks like sometimes the players just they're so low on confidence, or there's lack of accountability. And yeah, it's sad to see, because we want to see all the South African teams pushing each other to be better. But at this point in time, it seems the Stormers and the Bulls are the ones pushing each other to become better and better and better.
I agree, but if I look at that Sharks game, I saw, like, for example, a Jaden Hendrickson, and I promise you that that little chip kick that he keeps giving over the back line, it worked once in his career, and I think that he can do it every time. And I can promise you, it was not part of the game plan. Losing the ball again and conceding 2 tries from the same mistake is probably one of the worst things you can do as a Springbok winning scrum half. So that it is what it is. But anyway, that's our episode, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry,
I have a question before we go.
More passion,
Okay.
more passion, more energy, more energy.
Okay. Because I'm riled up. I'm not too sure how it works, but is there some form of relegation where the Sharks have the possibility to come into the URC and one of our teams drop out and just play the Curry Cup and the Challenge Cup if they have that privilege.
Yes, there is, and that will happen at the end of the season. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's our episode. We will love and leave you. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit that subscribe button, share this with your friends, and let us know in the comments what you think of these three brilliant-minded rugby gurus. And with a flickering over there. Yeah. Anyway, have a nice night, everyone. Bye.